Hey guys, Mr. Basie here, and welcome to the analysis and summary of Episode 8 of the Hunt the Truth audio series named Drip, Drip, Drip. Similar to the previous episode, this one contains staggering information, some of which probably directly hints at snapshots of the Halo 5 campaign, as well as slightly elaborates on the supposed after effects of the Spartan Program. Episode 8 gets started with Petra contacting Ben about the chaos that is ensuing due to the recent leak that Pharaoh had spoke of. Petra gets frustrated with Ben because initially he doesn't know what is going on. This is more than likely because he didn't expect the leak to happen so soon. She urgently tells him to check his feed to catch up on what is going on.
Every journalism outlet, every social hub, seemingly every person alive was buzzing about the same thing. What it said was perfectly clear. 10 days ago, in the outer colonies, the chief had suddenly appeared in the middle of a densely populated city at a regional embassy, where inside, long-awaited peace talks between human and alien delegates were on the cusp of an historic agreement, starting a firefight that would claim 19 human lives. He abducted the ambassador and blasted an escape path through security personnel, mowing them down with extreme prejudice as he escorted the alien delegation to safety. Once aboard his waiting evac ship, they fled the planet, leaving years of diplomatic work in ruins. The next day, local officials picked up a signal beacon that led them to a nearby field. There, they found the architect of the talks, revered peace activist Richard Sakibo, last seen in the chief's custody, lying dead in the grass.
Really quick, I want to make a note about this specific audio segment before we move on. So far, from the visual commercials of Spartan Locke versus Master Chief, we learn that Spartan Locke directly blames him for causing the destruction that surrounds them, as well as everything that happened up to that point. Not to mention that in Chief's advertisement, his dialogue can be perceived as self-inflictive upon his own actions. Here's a quick sample so you can come up with your own conclusions.
Is this what you wanted? Is this what you were looking for? Was everything you've compromised, everything you've done, worth it? Was it?
Considering the evidence thus far, this incident that Ben is referring to might directly correlate to the Halo 5 Guardians storyline. In another separate commercial, Spartan Locke is seen meeting with the Arbiter, asking for Master Chief. This poses another question. Was the Arbiter in the area, and if so, was it in relation to these peace talks? It would seem very strange that Spartan Locke would travel all the way to the Arbiter's homeworld to meet him. So it might be more likely he was fairly close in proximity to human-controlled planets, possibly even on a ship, orbiting the planet where the peace talks were taking place. With that in mind, let's move forward. Once he has gone through all the data, he calls Petra back and she immediately blames Pharaoh and asks Ben if he had known anything about this. He lies and says he doesn't know if it was Pharaoh or not, and while Petra is talking, his mind begins to drift away with thoughts of how much Chief has had to sacrifice over the years, without receiving much gratitude or recognition until very recently. In a nutshell, he says that all of this is just making him really angry, and that Chief doesn't deserve all of the hate that is going his way. However, his thoughts are suddenly interrupted with an ironically convenient malfunction in his equipment.
Then, she was gone. Waypoint was gone. My comm pad. Everything.
Your
gone.
quadrant is experiencing unusually high volume. On-site diagnostics are required. Would you like me to schedule an appointment?
Yes!
First availability is in 12 days at 3 p.m. Would you like me to schedule this appointment?
Yes!
Appointment scheduled. All services disabled. Goodbye.
No, dude, mother! They were cutting my communications off for 12 days? This was no quadrant failure. O&I was trying to shut me down. And of course, they were doing it quietly.
Worried, Ben decides to move his operation somewhere more clandestine, as he believes that O&I might have been able to track him due to his comm pad malfunction. When he reaches his destination, he gets a call from Mishak, who has finally resurfaced after being missing for a week.
Ben, listen, I'm sorry. Super sorry. But I had to go dark. I had to disappear. I operate in a very mysterious den of secrets. But this mission was on a level 3 stories below the subfloor of the secondary basement of my den of secrets. I shouldn't even be thinking about it.
Before Ben's conversation with Mishak continues, he comments on how his story had been stirring up a lot of feelings, especially in the outer colonies. He mentions that it would seem as though Oni's only interest in the outer colonies is when they need to cover something up. As their conversation continues, Mishak says that this new leak of information has a very different effect based on where you live. While planets like Earth were in an uproar and turning their anger towards the Master Chief, outer colonists still recognized Oni as the real problem and saw the Chief as more of a victim of Oni, just like them. Chief was just being used as a means to an end in their minds. Then suddenly, Mishak gives Ben some disturbing yet groundbreaking information that he was able to decipher from all of the excitement that Ben's story had made.
After hearing my interview with Petrovsky, he'd buried his face in the slush, compiling sort of a greatest hits of ONI's atrocities. He pushed me to a scattergraph of every case of exotic pediatric autoimmune disorders for the first few decades of the century. After some variable tweaking, a galactic map of human space popped up, decorated with clusters of dots, one for each sick kid. He told me I was looking at a reasonably accurate representation of where every single defective clone ONI planted had died. He overlaid the graph on another map that showed the distribution of human population. He asked me what I noticed. It's not random.
It's not random. This is the opposite of random, okay? For their Spartan abductions, Oni heavily favored the outer colonies. It's like their favorite candy store, except instead of candy, they were scooping up child soldiers.
Because it's easier to cover your tracks out there.
He goes on to say that Oni outer colonist kids have a lower value than kids that reside on Earth or Mars, so essentially it was cheaper for them to operate there. Ben comes to the realization that because the Spartan Program was created to crush insurrectionist rebellion, they were essentially picking kids from the same communities that were threatened to return and fight against that threat. However, they weren't fighting for the safety of their loved ones, but for the political benefit of ONI. Despite the chilling information that Mishak had already laid out for Ben, he wasn't quite done yet.
Did you ever wonder what would happen if one of Oni's doomed to die clones didn't die?
I hadn't considered that possibility. What happened to them?
It's not what happened to them. It's what happened to the people they'd been made to replace. 2 soldiers ran into a perfect copy of themselves. Think about it. You're secretly plucked from your childhood bed, thrown into a totally different life. And now, years later, you meet a mirror image of yourself. Someone who got to keep living your life. I mean, they'd probably seem to be more you than you. 2 records I found, 2 soldiers, both suicides.
Afterwards, Ben gets yet another call from Pharaoh that never seems to disappoint. They initially quarrel a bit over the information used to create this widespread chaos, but Pharaoh seems to convince Ben enough that it was justified. Despite being upset over how the chief is being treated, he listens to her. She explains that although she doesn't like it either, this is the panic that gets the people's attention. And she was right based on what was happening. Pharaoh then tells Ben that the meeting between ONI officials and high-ranking senators is already going underway, as delegates are converging to meet. And she comes up with an idea that will make Ben's truth reveal to the senators even more compelling.
I was anxious there wasn't enough time to make Mishak's data convincing enough, but Pharaoh gave me an idea that could amp up the persuasion. She listened in as I made the call. Anthony?
Hey, man, how you doing?
I just laid it right out there. Do you want to help bring down ONI? He didn't respond. I started to get nervous, but then he spoke up.
You bet your ass I do. What do you need from me?
Petrovsky was in. I gave him marching orders and hung up.
I'm so happy to hear
Pharaoh
that.
seemed pleased. Things seemed to be falling into place. So that's your real voice?
For the most part. Just off enough to be untraceable.
So why'd you switch it up? What happened to the scary voice?
Well, we're about to go somewhere scary. I wanted you to feel like you knew who would be fighting at your side. I wanted to give you a heads up. There's still one more leak coming.
What do you mean?
It's the icing on the cake. Just to keep the pieces in motion.
Okay, what is it? When is it hitting?
It just did.
I pulled up my public feed. It took a moment. And then it hit. A security video from the Outer Colonies Regional Embassy. Pharaoh was already gone.
Is this real?
But her latest leak was live. Right now, millions of people across occupied space we're all watching the same thing. Master Chief Petty Officer Spartan 117, seemingly unprovoked, waging a brutal assault against the peace consulate on Biko.
Alright guys, that wraps up this summary and analysis on episode 8. I'm actually really interested to hear your opinions on this matter. Do you agree with my theory early on, or maybe perhaps you have your own theories? If so, drop them down below. With that being said, rate the video what you think it deserved and subscribe if you'd like to become a Sage in training today. As always, this has been Mr. Basie, your favorite Sage, and I'll see you in the next video.